Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to be responsible for saving lives in a world where medicine barely understood disease? No hospitals, no antibiotics, no x-rays, no emergency rooms, no understanding of bacteria or viruses, only herbs, ancient books, experience, and hope. Imagine waking up one morning in a medieval town and discovering that you are the only doctor for miles around. People look to you for answers. They trust you with their children. They trust you with their parents. They trust you with their lives. And yet, every day, you are forced to battle illnesses you barely understand. This is the story of Dr. William, and this is what a single day in his life might have looked like. Long before sunrise, William opened his eyes. The room was cold. A weak candle flickered beside his bed while the last embers of the fireplace glowed faintly beneath a layer of ash. Outside, darkness still covered the town. The streets were silent. Most people remained asleep, but William rarely enjoyed peaceful mornings because illness never slept. For several moments, he remained seated on the edge of his bed. His back ached. His eyes felt heavy. The previous day had ended long after midnight. A difficult childbirth, an injured farmer, a fever spreading through several households. And now, another day was beginning. Slowly he stood and lit a fresh candle. Its warm glow illuminated the room around him. Wooden shelves lined the walls. Bundles of dried herbs hung from ceiling beams. Small jars contained powders, oils, roots, and medicines collected over many years. Beside the window sat several books. They were among his most valuable possessions. Some had been copied by hand years earlier. Others contained ancient medical teachings passed down through generations. William often studied them late into the night, searching for answers. Sometimes he found them. Sometimes he did not. That uncertainty haunted every physician of his time, because no matter how much they learned, disease always seemed to know more. He had barely finished preparing his satchel when loud knocking echoed through the house. 3 sharp knocks, then 3 more. Urgent, desperate. William already knew what that meant. Someone was suffering. Opening the door, he found a frightened man standing outside. His face was pale, his breathing quick. "My son," he said. "He has a terrible fever." Without hesitation, William grabbed his cloak. The father led him through muddy streets, illuminated only by the faint light of dawn. Rain from the previous day had turned the roads into thick mud. Cold winds swept between the buildings. The father walked quickly. Too quickly. The kind of pace people use when fear is chasing them. When they reached the cottage, William immediately understood why. The boy looked no older than 7. He lay motionless beneath blankets. His skin burned with fever. Sweat covered his forehead. His mother sat nearby holding his hand. Her eyes revealed an entire night without sleep. William knelt beside the child. He checked the boy's pulse, examined his breathing, looked into his eyes. The family watched silently, waiting, hoping, praying. They wanted certainty. They wanted reassurance. They wanted someone to tell them everything would be all right. But William could not promise that. And that was one of the hardest parts of being a medieval doctor. People expected answers, yet many times there were none. He prepared a herbal remedy and instructed the family to keep the child warm and hydrated. Then he stood. The mother looked at him. "Will he survive?" William hesitated, only briefly, but she noticed. And that hesitation answered the question better than words ever could. By mid-morning, William had already visited 3 more patients. A merchant suffering severe stomach pain, an elderly widow whose joints hurt so badly she could barely walk, a young blacksmith with a deep cut across his hand, Each patient carried their own fears, their own suffering, and each expected the doctor to somehow make things better. William treated wounds, prepared medicines, offered advice, but often what people needed most was hope, because medieval life was filled with uncertainty. A simple infection could become fatal. A small injury could end a livelihood. A fever could take a child within days. Modern people rarely think about how terrifying illness once was. But medieval families lived with that fear constantly. Around midday, a messenger arrived on horseback. A farmer had been badly injured while working. The situation sounded serious. William mounted his horse and followed the messenger into the countryside. Dark clouds gathered overhead. The wind grew stronger. By the time they reached the farm, rain had begun to fall. The injured man lay inside a barn. His leg had been crushed beneath a heavy wagon wheel. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. His wife knelt beside him, crying quietly. William immediately began examining the injury. The damage was severe, far worse than he had feared. He cleaned the wound as best he could, applied bandages, did everything within his power. But deep down, he knew the truth. If infection set in, there was very little he could do. The farmer squeezed his arm. "Tell me honestly." William looked at him. Neither man spoke for several seconds, because both already understood some battles could not be won, not in medieval times, not with the knowledge available. The farmer nodded slowly, and somehow that silent acceptance felt heavier than grief itself. The rain continued throughout the afternoon. William traveled from one home to another. The town seemed filled with sickness. Every door revealed another problem, another family in distress, another life hanging in uncertainty. Hour after hour, the doctor walked muddy roads, carrying the burden of other people's fears. Yet no one ever asked about his. No one asked how it felt to watch patients die despite your best efforts. No one asked how many nights he lay awake wondering whether he had missed something, whether a different herb, a different treatment, a different decision might have saved someone, because doctors carried their failures quietly, just as patients carried their pain. As evening approached, William returned to the home of the feverish boy. The cottage was silent, far too silent. The moment he stepped inside, his heart sank. The mother sat beside the bed. Tears rolled down her face. The father stared at the floor. The boy was gone. For several moments, no one spoke. There were no words capable of repairing that kind of loss. William felt the familiar weight settle inside his chest. He had experienced moments like this before, many times, yet they never became easier. Every death remained with him, every face, every family, every failure. He often wondered if other doctors carried the same invisible burden, or if he simply cared too much. Night had fully fallen by the time William finally returned home. Exhaustion weighed upon every step. His boots were soaked, his cloak smelled of rain, his satchel was nearly empty. The candle on his desk flickered softly as he entered the room. For the first time all day, silence surrounded him. He sat beside the window overlooking the sleeping town. Somewhere beyond the darkness, families were eating supper, children were falling asleep, lives were continuing, and tomorrow morning, new illnesses would arrive, new injuries, new fears, new hopes.
Now,
William looked down at his hands, hands that had delivered babies, treated wounds, comforted grieving parents, and failed to save people he desperately wanted to help. Then he realized something. The greatest struggle of being a medieval doctor was not the long hours. It was not the cold, the mud, the exhaustion, the lack of knowledge. The greatest struggle was carrying responsibility for lives when certainty did not exist, trying to heal people while surrounded by mysteries, trying to offer hope while fighting your own doubts, and still choosing to continue, day after day, year after year. Because somewhere in the town, another frightened family would soon need him, another child would fall sick, another farmer would be injured, another life would depend on his presence. History remembers kings. History remembers battles. History remembers castles. But for ordinary people living in medieval times, one of the most important figures in their world was often a tired physician carrying a worn leather satchel through muddy streets before dawn, not because he possessed miracles, but because he never stopped trying. And perhaps that is the most human story of all.